Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the breakout session, Eating for Empathy, Nutrition for Resilience and Emotional Stamina. We're so glad to have you here today. And here is our speaker. Please remember to remain muted, and you can put your questions in the chat. Also, put your name and where you live in the chat. I'd love to know you all. Thank you so much. The floor is yours, Rachel.
So yes, as Rhiannon mentioned, my name is Rachel Khani, and I am a AADP certified health coach, which means I'm certified through the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. And this is one of my favorite topics to cover is emotional stamina, nutritional resilience, the pathway to nourishing ourselves in a way that as parents, we can show up for our children being at our best, as well as giving them our best and creating a space for our children to grow and thrive where we are really modeling for them a balanced and just energetic and really enthusiastic about life parent. So this is a little bit about my history. This is actually a picture of me with my eldest who just turned 6 over the summer. I have a 6-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm actually getting ready to give birth to our third next week, very pregnant right now. So I have been in this balance between raising children, being in the workforce, and nourishing myself for quite a while now. And I realized that this was something that more and more parents were really struggling to find this definition of how we're nourishing ourselves while we're going through this parenting journey. So I've been in practice for 8 years now as a health coach, and I actually started my journey in the small business world, and I was very ambitious and put a lot of time and effort into my career, and in the process really burned myself out and ended up with a lot of digestive issues. And while trying to figure out what was really going on with my body, I realized that one of the biggest things that was a factor was what I was eating each day, what I was taking in. That was like the simplest choice that I could come down to in my state of overwhelm around everything that was going on in my life was just, I can choose what I'm going to eat for my next meal, and I can recognize how that's impacting the way that I'm showing up in my life. So I really realized after digestive issues had gone on for several years, how much it was influencing my state of mind and my mood and my emotional health as well. And around that time, I actually was offered a scholarship to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York, where I completed my training as a health coach, and in the process really learned how to manage my digestive issues, to heal from a lot of things that had gone on for a long time in my life, and to recognize the power of food and its impact and what that was doing just in my day-to-day experience. So I now have been working the past 8 years with a lot of small business owners and parents on digestive distress, digestive disorders, sleep, low energy, and finding balanced mood. And that has been so fulfilling for me. And I just continue to find that, especially in the parenting world, this is not something that seems to me to be addressed very specifically or in detail. We all feel like we should be taking better care of ourselves. We all feel like we should be eating better, but as to actually knowing what steps are going to be the most effective, it gets really challenging to narrow that down. And with already feeling like we have so much on our plate to take care of, it can become kind of this spiral where we just keep trying to make an effort and then feel like we're failing. So I'm excited today to give you some suggestions and some very specific areas that you can focus on to begin to see a shift if this has been a struggle for you as well around eating and taking care of yourself. So as parents, we certainly are excellent at putting ourselves last and expecting the most from ourselves. I think it's easy for us to sacrifice our own needs out of love for our children, of course. We very frequently find ourselves that we are coming very, very last when it comes to even just the basics of actually even having a meal. A lot of parents that I talk to, we're used to grazing and snacking or just eating what's available and not actually taking the time to nourish ourselves. But one of the things that I think is really unfair is that we hold these expectations for ourselves that are so unrealistic. And then we are constantly judging ourselves as to why we feel like we can't live up to this ideal that we have in our heads. And, if I read one more article that's talking about like, okay, as a parent or as a mother, you should just take some self-care time and go get your nails done or go have a bath. It's like, that's not enough to counter the amount of burnout that most of us are dealing with or the amount of emotional stress that we're facing when we're trying to juggle a lot of different aspects of life and show up as the wonderful parents that we really want to be and that we desire to be. So I think that this just comes back to a deeper question around, how are we choosing to nourish ourselves rather than just prop ourselves up? And how are we choosing to lay a foundation, not only for ourselves, but as an example for our children and our family of what it means to be well taken care of and what that looks like? And the effects of putting ourselves last are really far beyond just the present moment and present burnout. It really has a lasting impact on our children as well, because they don't get to experience our true nature, the true wonderful people that we are, because they're just seeing us that we're, getting through each day and we're just trying to make it work, rather than we're finding joy in our lives and joy in our experience. And I think it's time to recognize that what our children really need most is us. And they don't need us as, sacrificing ourselves for their higher good every single day. They need us to be showing them what it looks like to be a happy, fulfilled adult. And they need us as a resilient, energetic, and as a safe container for their growth, so that we can show up not only with the energy that we need, but also show up that emotional stability that's so important as well. And I think a lot of times we're looking outside of ourselves for what's causing us to feel certain ways or just feel overwhelmed. And we're not recognizing that we actually have this constant power within us to be providing some stability for ourselves, to be able to show up with a greater emotional capacity, to allow our children to have that space for their emotions, because we are able to manage our own so successfully. So as a parent, a foundation of effective self-nourishment is really a necessity. It's not a luxury. I think it's been very poorly portrayed in our society, in our culture, that taking care of yourself is a luxury, and that, you should be always on the run, always on the go, always taking things on. And if you're not maxed out, then you're not doing enough. Instead, I think this is something that is a necessity for the health of ourselves as well as the health of our families. So if anyone is open to sharing, I would love to hear from a few of you as to what has been working for you right now around showing up at your best. What needs to happen first? So how do you generate a positive state? But what needs to happen first for you to show up at your best in a day? Whether it's how you start your morning or how you have some self-time worked into your day. If anyone's open to sharing, I'd love for you to unmute and tell me what really works well for you right now that you found.
I'll share. Sorry, I had to jump out and jump back in and help some other people.
That's okay. Sure. I'd love to hear you.
I need my morning time, my quiet time, just to get the day going and get my mind set for what's going to happen that day.
Yes.
However I can prepare for it. And going to the gym.
Important.
I end my day going to the gym typically. So
that's great. I usually, with most clients, when I start working with them, I recommend that they work on how they start their day and how they finish their day to sandwich things. So that is really important. Having some quiet time when you first start your day, even if it's just a few minutes where you feel like you can check out and just have some time to think through what's happening in the day, some time to just process, to wake up. That is really, really important part of showing up. Absolutely. Anyone else have something that's been working really well for them? For you to be able to start your day, to feel like you're at your best through the day, that you have the stamina that you need?
Daily affirmations, like stating to my son, we're going to have a good day. Yes. Today's going to be good. You're going to have a good attitude. It really helps him and me.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. Making sure that there are little things around your space too that kind of remind you of that, of like what's going well. And certainly catching those thoughts and repeating those thoughts is so important as far as the neural pathways and the habits of thought that we fall into about it and how the days are going. It's so easy for us to fall into, oh, it's hard, or there's too much going on, or some of the common things that we might tell ourselves. But having a positive start to that is so valuable to create that from the very beginning, from the time you start your day. Wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else like to share? Anyone else have anything? Maybe we take one or two more if anybody's open to that.
There's a comment in the chat that just said coffee to start my day and reading to end my day.
Very nice. Yes. I'm a big fan of reading and actually enjoying some really good novels and stuff at the end of the day too, as a motivation to get in bed and relax and enjoy winding down. That's a great suggestion too. And yes, there's nothing like a hot drink in the morning and a few minutes of quiet. to just kind of put us in a state of like, okay, yes, I've got this. Great. Thank you all so much for sharing that. All right. So a lot of times we look outside of ourselves for where the problems are coming from, and we try to put our focus there as far as what we should be changing about our schedule or the environment that we're in or the people that we're around or what we're committing to. And we say things like, if circumstances were different, I would be different. You know, I would show up differently. I would show up more calmly. I would have more control over things, whatever that looks like for you. Or, you know, another common one, if I didn't have so much on my plate right now, I'd be able to take better care of myself. I'd be able to go to the gym. I'd be able to start my day more calmly. I'd be able to do some of these things. I'd be able to plan my meals ahead. And so we start looking outside of ourselves, though, and trying to fix a lot of the things that are happening when a lot of times there's just nothing else that we can do about that. It's like, these are the demands that are on us right now. These are the things that we're committed to doing. These are the things that our children need, whether it's schooling and classes and things that are going on, or whatever that looks like for you, work commitments. Those are things that are going to be remaining the same. There's always going to be stressors in our lives. And so putting the blame outside of that and trying to constantly fix or manage what's happening as a way of kind of appeasing or finding a way through, it's one way to handle things. Certainly want to make sure that we're not taking on more than we can handle and making sure that we're eliminating any tasks or any activities that are just too much. But I think a lot of times that also detracts from the power that we have right now within ourselves to start making different choices and to start managing ourselves differently from within. So some of the things we have immediate power over is we have power over our next meal or our next snack, the food we eat. We have power over the way we allow and process emotions. So what we're holding within or what we're choosing to express or how we're expressing it or to whom. And if that's healthy, if that's actually working well for us, if that's actually allowing space and allowing emotions to move through us, or whether we're holding on to things and allowing those things to fester and then expressing them in other ways, which a lot of times comes through as emotional eating. So those two can often be tied together. And then the relationship that we build with our amazing bodies as far as how much respect we're giving to the messages that our bodies are sending us at all times, because our bodies are always in open communication. There's always signals coming through, whether it's hunger or thirst or basics like that, or whether it's deeper things like, I know I'm headed for burnout, or I know I'm headed towards getting sick because I can feel these things coming up in my body. So paying attention and giving respect to those signals is one of the ways we can really begin to shift the relationship we have with our bodies into a more positive zone where we're able to address things as they come up instead of waiting until it becomes something that's more serious or that completely takes us out for a couple of days, or until we have a cold or we end up with some type of sickness where we have to take time off of work and take time off of our lives to be able to recover. So these three tools can support us to not only show up for our children, but to also be our best selves and to have joy and to thrive in our own lives, which is really the goal. It's like we want to be, definitely, of course, we want to be showing up for our children in the best way possible, but we also want to take in the value of how important it is for us to be enjoying our lives, to be thriving in our own experience. So this is what I call the self-defeating cycle. And I came up with this after I found I was looping through this so many times. And I was talking to clients and other parents and realized like, yeah, this is a pretty common cycle. So, you know, there's some type of life event, whatever it may be. And then there's the emotional stress that's attached to that, large or small, depending on. A lot of times that leads to some poor choices for self-care, which in many cases starts with food. Some poor food choices, either it's eating out a lot because we're just too stressed to handle cooking at home. It's, snacking along the way. It's the treats that we give ourselves. But a lot of times it's usually a food decline. When emotional stress goes up, then the food choices tend to decline. And then we come to unmet needs where we are not acknowledging, okay, I have some stress going on right now. What are the needs that would actually help me to deal with that stress if they were met? How could I be meeting this stress in a different way instead of turning to food or turning to other things to just kind of prop me up and keep me going? So we have ongoing unmet needs that happen, which then leads to overwhelm and exhaustion most of the time. And a lot of times we'll see sleep decline around that time because the stress is too great, or because of what we're eating, or we're not exercising enough, or things start to fall apart and we just are not getting the rest we need as well, or we're pushing ourselves to try to get more done. And then the only result of that that's left is burnout. And so we hit burnout. We have a little bit of time to, where we just simply have to shut down because our bodies are amazing. When we get to a certain point, the body will shut itself down for a while if we're not doing a good job of doing that. Shut itself down for a little while to recover. And then we're okay, and we bounce back and we're like, okay, I got this. It's going to be great. And then when the next life event hits, and we go around that loop again. So I think this is a really important thing to just recognize, like we want to escape this circle. I recognize that one of the, every time I was going around this, I would just really feel like a crappy parent along the way. Like when I hit that overwhelm exhaustion point, I just started to feel like, I'm not showing up for my kids the way that I want to. I'm not communicating the way that I want to. And that really bothered me. So like, where do I need to backtrack to start finding that point, that tipping point where I can begin to address this before I get all the way to the point of burnout, and where I can actually start to show up as the way that I want to be, communicating the way that I want to be. So how can we generate health, positivity, and resilience from within? Let's go into that. So let's look at this from a new angle. Instead of just dealing with what's happening, trying to prop ourselves up, whether it's with caffeine or the food choices we're making or whatever it is, that we start tuning into our body and we start reading the signs. We actually begin to pay attention to those messages that are popping up every day. And we start to make choices that address those specific things. An earlier bedtime, having a lunch break, making sure that we're starting our day with quiet, like we were talking about earlier, having our coffee alone in the morning for a few minutes so we can just center ourselves, doing some meditation, meeting the things that are popping up immediately and making a choice that addresses that, instead of waiting until some other type of more negative appeasement comes in. Because a lot of times we start looking for, what can I do to just soothe this, whether it's sugar or whether it's, sometimes we even go opposite and we'll like stay up later because we feel like that's the only time we're getting time for ourselves. But those things are counterproductive. So instead we start tuning into our body, reading the signs, and actually giving a real nourishing solution to those messages. And that to me comes down to respecting ourselves, respecting our bodies, rather than staying in a state of denial over that this is not happening. I've got this under control. I'm not choosing to acknowledge that this is a problem right now. It's like people are dealing with this stuff all the time. All those little things that we tell ourselves about ways that we perhaps should be. We feel we should be this way, or we should be able to handle this. So we go into this state of denial instead of actually addressing those things from the power that we already have, from the things that we already have available to us. And then alignment with what we want to experience. So, for me, I really value showing up as a peaceful person in the day. Like, I do not enjoy being somebody who feels, is tense or who feels snappy. That's one of my defaults, is actually that I get very snappy when I get overwhelmed and I feel like I overreact to things. So alignment with what we want to experience, the type of person that we really want to be, and thinking about that and what helps us to get to that point. I would strongly recommend, actually, at the end of this session, if you have a few minutes, jot down a list of the things that put you in your best state, put you as your best self. And think about that a little bit and just look at it. It can be 2 or 3 things, but things that that like, oh, wow, when I do this, every time it helps me to show up as a more peaceful and present person. So I can do that immediately. I have that accessible to me in every moment to be able to utilize that. And then advancing our state of being rather than using food as a reward or distraction. I mean, food has kind of taken over our society and our culture as just like, oh, you do this and you have this as a reward. And it's usually the detrimental foods, unfortunately, that are used as a reward or a distraction. It's like you can always find somebody who wants to go out and have pizza and a beer with you, but it's hard to find somebody who wants to do like a kale smoothie cleanse with you, or to find somebody who's really looking at food as a way of advancing their state of mind and really nourishing their bodies, instead of looking at it as like, oh, this is just something fun. So I think that's an important shift to make around food in general, is just beginning to look at it as like, how is it serving me? How is it nourishing me? Rather than how am I using it as, okay, this is something that helps me to process emotions or helps me distract from my emotions or to distract from what's really going on. And then conscious eating is where we really begin to observe what foods impact us and how. And that allows us to begin to intuitively eat in a way that we know is actually helping us to show up better, helping us to feel better. When you eat a certain food, when you eat a piece of cake, for example, and you really take in and recognize how your body's experiencing that, if you have an energy dip afterwards, or you just feel really scattered, or however that transpires for you, and then you begin to pay attention to, well, when I eat this salad for lunch, I notice this, then it becomes less of a battle within ourselves, because we're not just like, okay, I never get to treat myself, or I feel like I'm depriving myself, so I'll choose the salad to be good. But it becomes more of an intuitive, I want to eat this way because I want to feel this state of mind. I want to feel this state of being, rather than I want to be just rewarding myself or distracting myself. So I want to go into 3 silent saboteurs that I feel like have the biggest impact on most people in their day. And these are just some of the basic ones. So obviously some of these can go much deeper. And if you have specific issues that you're dealing with that you need nutritional guidance on, then you would want to be looking for a very specific plan around what you're eating. But these are some of the general problems that I see very frequently, and that I feel like are fairly easy to address once you can start to see and to get on a plan where you're really paying attention to the signs that your body is sending you. So the first is blood sugar. So having balanced blood sugar, starting your day in a way, this is actually a really big part of how you start your day. Starting your day in a way where you can escape from feeling scattered, anxious, and irritable by what you're eating for your first meal of the day, and how well you're doing with eating frequently enough so that you don't have any major blood sugar dips through the rest of your day. And then digestion and elimination. So a lot of the brain fog and the belly bloat and a lot of the digestive issues that we see is really poor digestion and poor absorption, and then poor elimination as well. So when we're holding on to toxicity because we're not eliminating well, then it's really hard for our bodies to function in a clear and uplifted manner. And that's such an important part of any type of digestive program, is to make sure that you're eliminating well. And then adrenal fatigue, which I think most of us can probably relate to that on some level. Adrenal fatigue is so common these days, with all of us taking on so much, but escaping from the exhaustion, the sleeplessness, and the overwhelm that usually goes along with that. So let's start with the blood sugar, because I think that's one of the more important, and like I was saying, it's fairly simple to address once you begin to identify it. So the goal here would be feeling calm, energized, and focused all day long. And if you are someone who feels like, you have a lot of emotions come up, or you feel like you're using things to try to help you to process emotions, it may be that you need to start with your blood sugar first and really see the impact that has for you, because a lot of mood swings can come back to just something as basic as this. This has certainly been my experience. So making breakfast a powerhouse, where you actually have a really good sized meal, a good balance of protein and some complex carbohydrates. And I even recommend some vegetables usually included in your breakfast, so that you can feel very nourished and very grounded from the time that you start with your first meal of the day. And if you are someone who often feels like, you're just kind of having difficulty feeling that stability in yourself and feeling that groundedness in yourself, then breakfast can be one of the things that actually impacts that the most. So starting with a really healthy, nutritious breakfast that's balanced, taking some time to actually consume that and taste that. Even if it's something that you're preparing ahead, that you give yourself, 15 minutes or so to be able to eat breakfast in the morning. Very, very important part of getting off of this up and down roller coaster that we often find ourselves on. And then eating every 3 to 4 hours. So there's a lot of information out there about intermittent fasting. And I have a lot of clients ask me about that, so I'll just touch on that briefly. But my biggest problem with intermittent fasting is just that I don't see especially a lot of women thriving on that. I usually find them feeling even more stressed and more anxious through their day because they're not eating enough at the start of their day to feel stable and nourished through the rest of it. And it's something that I consistently have talked to many, many women clients. And, it works well for some people, but I feel like it's mostly men. And that's something you can take into consideration. If you're finding it's working wonderfully for you, then by all means, I think it's a great health strategy. But if you're finding that it's making you feel scattered and just really exhausted, one of the things for me was the afternoons feeling really, really exhausted, and then actually consuming more sugars and stuff in the afternoon because I felt like I needed to make up for something because my body was feeling deficient. So I'm not a fan of getting to that space where you're really, really hungry and feeling like you just need to keep powering through. I find it much more beneficial and much more people are much more able to show up consistently when they're nourishing themselves well at frequent intervals through the day. And it doesn't impact your weight the way people may think. They will often think that, okay, well, because I'm not eating for the first half of the day, I'm decreasing my calories, but you usually end up making up for that somewhere else. So I think eating every 3 to 4 hours, this is what I found for myself and my clients, works really, really well. Consuming a solid breakfast, eating 3 or 4 hours, and never allowing yourself to get to the point where you feel really, really hungry, but snacking often enough and then having 3 main meals so you can feel like you're stable through the day. And honestly, I think this is probably the biggest thing that shows up as making an impact in our emotional state and our mental clarity through the day. So if those are things that you're struggling with, this is a great place to start. So focusing on plenty of vegetables, fruits, and quality protein. Quality proteins to me usually means organic, preferably, and chicken and fish primarily, with some red meat woven in. I think a few servings of beef in a week can often help to feel more grounded, and also to get the iron and some of the other minerals that we need. And then notice how you feel after eating certain foods and pay attention to sensitivities. A lot of times blood sugar can be thrown off even when you are eating healthfully, just because you're sensitive to some of the foods, or you're allergic to some of the foods that you might be consuming. So unfortunately, these are foods that are so dominant in our food supply today, but dairy, gluten, corn, eggs, refined sugar, and soy are often some of the things that, even if you're eating like a whole wheat bread sandwich, if you're sensitive to gluten, you'll notice that you feel very fatigued afterwards, or you'll notice that your blood sugar is off if you choose to check it. After you consume that, it'll be too high, or it'll be just showing up in different ways that you might not have pinpointed before, because you're like, well, this is a health food. But if you're sensitive to that, it can still show up as throwing off your energy for the rest of the day. I actually have had a few clients that have experimented, particularly with the gluten challenge. And I often recommend that clients take a certain food out of their diet for 6 days, and then on the 7th day consume a lot of it. And most often they will be like, wow, on the 7th day when I consumed a lot of bread after not eating it, I was just so exhausted. I felt like I had to nap the rest of the afternoon. So those are things to pay attention to. Either fatigue or feeling frazzled or feeling brain fog after you eat a certain food can often indicate that there's a type of sensitivity there. So does anybody have, before I move on, I know I've been talking and I tend to talk very fast. So if anybody has any questions about blood sugar, please feel free to chime in, and I'll take a few moments here. All right, so the next thing we really want to focus on is boosting our digestive power. So how well we're breaking down foods and how well we're absorbing the foods that we're eating. And this is such a powerful point as well, because so many people are dealing with a leaky gut, a form of leaky gut, where they are actually having been eating inflammatory foods for so long that their small intestine is not absorbing effectively. And a lot of times particles of food are escaping into the bloodstream and causing an inflammatory response. And just really, this can be such a significant drain of energy without really being able to be easily diagnosed or pinpointed. So boosting your digestive power, healing your gut is one of the more important things as well. This is why I've chosen it as number 2. After you address blood sugar issues, let's work on boosting your digestive power so that you can start to feel the rush of energy and actually having an excess of energy instead of always feeling like you're fighting to have enough energy to make it through the day. So strengthening digestion, I find that one of the biggest things here is making sure that you're actually getting the rest you need, because digestion is also very tied to your adrenal health. But some of the things that you can start doing right away to begin nourishing your body and boosting your ability to digest well is to have fresh celery juice in the morning. Celery actually has the mineral salts that allow your body to break down foods more effectively and to help push things through. And they also boost your hydrochloric acid. So it allows your stomach to have the amount of digestive juices it needs to break down the foods well, which is such an important part. So you want to focus on chewing well, which is an important piece, but also strengthening your stomach acid so that you can actually break things down. And a lot of people ask me, well, if I do that, aren't I going to have heartburn, or I'm taking some type of medication for heartburn? But the thing is that you actually need an optimal amount of digestive juices in order to break down your foods. So it usually does not correlate to heartburn. Heartburn is usually more related to either the type of acidic foods that you're eating, or it's because you don't have enough digestive juices to break down well. And so your body's kind of just circulating and regurgitating from your stomach and causing that type of reaction. So celery juice is one of my favorite ways. It's a little time consuming because you have to, of course, get up, wash all the celery. You want to drink it on an empty stomach. First thing in the morning is the best time to do that so that you can really get your digestion flowing before you eat breakfast. But if you have the time and if you have the sense to do that, I think it's a great strategy. It works so well for so many clients. And you want to drink about 10 to 12 ounces first thing in the morning. But then another more simplistic solution is to take digestive enzymes with a meal. And there's a lot of plant-based digestive enzymes that are great, even at Whole Foods, where you can take them with the first few bites of your meal to just make sure that you're breaking things down well. And then another solution, which is similar to the celery juice, is to do barley grass juice powder. And this is easier because it's already made, but the taste is certainly not wonderful. I have a lot of clients that complain about the taste. So you have to decide if that's something you're willing to get down in the morning. But it's like a teaspoon and 8 ounces of water. And the barley grass juice powder is similar to the celery juice in that it really helps to nourish your adrenals and also strengthen your digestive juices. And then after we're doing something to strengthen our digestive power, we want to ease the digestive load by, again, eating smaller meals. So that includes, like I was saying, eating every 3 to 4 hours, 3 main meals, some snacks along the way, and then eating hygiene, which means that we're actually taking the time to taste our food, to chew our food well, preferably to sit down and have a meal. At least, if it can't be done 3 times a day, because I know lunch can get scattered at times, especially with work schedules, but at least having dinner where you're sitting down and tasting each bite, taking the time to really enjoy your meal. And then removing trigger foods that are causing stress to your body by creating an inflammatory reaction. And then the next step of that is to just start to gently detox. I get asked all the time, like, should I do a juice cleanse? Should I do some major detoxing to get started? Because people love that experience of like a fresh start. And, something speaks to you. I think there's value in some of that, but I think the most effective detox is actually to just consistently have habits that you come back to on a regular basis and that you really implement well. So even if you get off track, you recognize that when I come back to these habits, I'm doing well and I feel at my best. But to gently detox, you want to include, plenty of water in your day, 60 to 70 ounces of water. Cilantro and parsley are wonderful to include if you're doing smoothies at all through the day, or salads, because they actually help to pull toxins out of your body and out of your digestive tract. And then high fiber meals, so consuming plenty of whole grains, consuming plenty of vegetables, soluble and insoluble fiber, so things like chia seed that are soluble fiber that really help to pull toxins out of the body and out of the system, including those in your smoothie, doing something like chia seed pudding, but then also just having a lot of fresh, healthy vegetables and greens, especially greens. So salads and broccoli and a lot of the things that we tend to have a harder time prepping, but if we begin to stock them, we can start to work them into most of our meals in a day. And then healing your gut. So like I was talking about, many people are suffering with some form or some level of leaky gut. So having some glutamine powder, which is an amino acid, which repairs soft tissue and really helps to ease any discomfort or any issues that are going on with the small and large intestine. And then aloe vera juice, especially if you're someone who's struggled with acidity, reflux, or GERD, having some aloe vera juice that you're drinking each day can be so helpful with actually easing, soothing, healing throughout the entire digestive system. And then lastly, we want to boost the positive bacteria that we have in our gut. So as we begin to eat healthier, we actually are providing the nourishment that healthy bacteria in our gut needs in order to thrive, but to nourish that further and to help make up for any type of, lack that we've had in the past. Adding in probiotics in a capsule form is fine, but also adding in some fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi and some of the things that we tend to not eat as commonly in our diet now, but can be so helpful. And you often may notice that you feel a boost from including some of those foods in your diet as well as far as your energy. Now, does anybody have any questions about digestion or any of these things that I mentioned before I jump on to the next? feel free to unmute. I'd love to take your questions if you have any. If not, we'll go ahead and move on.
I have a question. I've had my gallbladder
Sure.
recently removed. What do you recommend for people that have that?
I definitely recommend focusing on higher fiber meals. So making sure that you're doing lots of things like squashes and sweet potatoes, some whole grains like brown rice and millet and sorghum, and then a good selection of vegetables. And then you want to, of course, keep your fattier meats to a minimum to help with breaking those down effectively. Those would be my primary recommendations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question. Anybody else have any questions before we move on? All right. So let's go to boosting your energy and metabolism. So one of the things that happens is that the way that our bodies were actually designed, the way we've evolved, is that our brains really have the capacity to revert back to more and more of our original state, depending on how much nutrition we have circulating in our bodies at any one time. So our executive functioning brain is going to be functioning best when we have an adequate amount of nutrition in our system at all times, when we're getting the nutrients that we need. The more nutritionally deficient we get, the more we tend to revert to our primal brains and into our fight or flight mode, into reactivity, into not having that judgment that we often need in order to make the call to show up with emotional stability in that moment. So I think this is such a fascinating way that we've been designed, where we really literally come back to survival more and more as we get into that mode of either having a nutritional lack, or whether we're pushing ourselves too far, whether we're not nourishing ourselves often enough, starving ourselves through the day. This has a direct impact on how well we're able to show up, how well we're able to make decisions, how well we're able to make judgment calls on what's happening, and how well we're managing our emotions. So I think that's one of the first things that is important to address in how often we're eating. Because I think another piece that a lot of people have kind of backwards is that they feel like, well, if I'm not eating, if I'm pushing myself further, then my metabolism is going to be burning more calories and I will be losing weight faster, or I'll be running on, less calories. So I'll be having more energy. It's kind of a reverse psychology there. But the truth of the matter is that by nourishing yourself often enough with the right foods, you actually boost your metabolism more. And in a lot of cases, what research has shown is that if you are consuming a healthy, nutritious meal within the first hour of waking up, your metabolism runs higher for the rest of the day and actually begins to wind down at night the way that it should, versus trying to push yourself through without meals and try to make it on a minimum amount of food in the day. So that's just another little plug for nourishing yourself well and often. And then 8 hours of sleep every night. So I think the sleep is one of the more important things to address anytime we're talking about nourishment and self-care, because really that's one of the things that if it's not there, then everything else begins to break down, because we have more cravings, we have more need for sugar. Our bodies are brilliant and recognize that when we're sleep deprived, we need energy. And so we're automatically craving foods that are going to give us the quickest rush possible. And that's usually not the most healthy foods, junk foods, refined carbs, sugars. So if we can make sleep one of our focus points and make that a priority, that we're going to bed the same time, waking up around the same time, and we're doing the things that we need to do to support quality sleep, which also comes back to eliminating trigger foods, making sure our blood sugar is balanced through the day so that we're not ending up wired by the time we get to bedtime. Because a lot of times when our blood sugar is off balance, then by nighttime, we're still feeling like we're either super, what's the right word that I'm looking for here? But it's feeling super energized, or feeling super buzzed is the word that's coming to mind. Feeling very buzzed at the end of the day instead of feeling like we can wind down into good quality sleep. So making sure our blood sugar is staying balanced, making sure trigger foods are off the menu, and then making sure we're getting adequate minerals. So one of the things I find most frequently for my clients is we often will start with a magnesium supplement because most people are deficient in magnesium. And there's just not enough of it available in our diet to be able to meet the needs that we have as quickly as we're burning through it in most cases. You'd have to eat so many greens that it would be unrealistic to consider that you'd be getting the amount of magnesium you need. So I have to do a powdered magnesium natural calm, is the one that I use the most before bed, to just help the body to be able to manage stress, to let go of stress from the day, be able to ease into a more restful sleep. And then, aiming for that 7 to 8 hours every night is very important. And then exercising in the morning to actually raise your cortisol level. So even if you're only doing a little bit of exercise to start, if you're just going for a walk, if you are doing a little bit of yoga, getting that movement in first thing in the morning actually helps your body to elevate your cortisol when you want it to be higher. You want your cortisol to be high in the morning and low in the evening when you're ready to go to bed. So if you exercise in the morning to get your body used to that pattern, sometimes this is a lot of reprogramming, because in our work lives, a lot of times we'll be starting with lower cortisol, and then by the end of the day, we're very stressed and our cortisol will be super high from all the things that have happened in our day. So we want to reverse that by allowing our bodies to naturally raise that in the morning and be able to allow that to phase off, give us an appropriate amount of cortisol through the day. So by evening time, we're ready to fall asleep, and we feel like we've processed the things that we needed to process and accomplished what we needed to be able to drop off at the end of the day. So a little bit of exercise in the morning, very, very important. And then giving space and grace to our emotions. So allowing ourselves to be able to process those in a way that feels appropriate, whether it's sharing with a friend, whether it's actually getting some support around that. But most importantly, having grace for ourselves that these are the things that we are feeling and experiencing. And rather than compressing them down, allowing them some space to breathe and giving them room and finding an appropriate expression. So when we are denying ourselves, that space and that grace, a lot of times that transpires as lower and lower energy, because we're just holding things in for so long, trying to hold it together, rather than giving ourselves room to allow that out. So one of the things that I love is a quote. I actually got this from a gentleman that I work with named Dr. Sexton, is that resilience is a process and not a state. So if we really want to be bouncing back more and more quickly into, like I talked about earlier, staying in alignment with who we really want to be and how we want to be showing up in the world as parents and human beings, then we have to accept that there's going to be times where we are just off track, or things are not going the way that we want them to. And that's okay, because we know that we're going to come back to our process and we're going to continue that. We are not looking for a homeostasis perfection state where we are always going to be on track and we're always going to be eating exactly what we need to be eating and getting our 8 hours of sleep and all that. That's not real life. So we want to be knowing, again, the practices that support us the most, and the processes that we can implement and we can choose, so that we can come back to those when life is throwing us off, and allow us to be supported by our habits and our processes, rather than feeling like everything is a complete wash once something happens. We want to start to create that habitual reaction, instead of feeling that, okay, when I'm thrown off and everything, I have to start all over again with rebuilding the habits, or I messed it up and now it's ruined and I need to start all the way back with trying to eat healthy again. We want to recognize that, no, this is a life event, and we want to come back to those processes, those healthy processes. And I think that these 3 that I've outlined for you today are some of the more important: balancing your blood sugar, making sure you're digesting well, taking care of your energy and your metabolism. Those 3 alone can be a foundation of your process, no matter what is happening in your life. You can choose to come back and implement one of those things or some of those things in your day. And that puts the power back in your heart and in your hands, rather than feeling like you are being pushed about by the winds of life and feeling like you do not have control on what's actually happening to you or how you're able to show up in a day. That's one of the things that I find I love the most about nutrition and the real power of food, is that to me, it makes me feel like I do have power over what's happening. I do have some level of control over how I'm showing up and what's happening with me, because I can choose how I'm eating and how I'm nourishing myself. And I have my processes that I know I can return to at any time to give me that stability back. And then setting up support systems. So we certainly all need some people around us. We need to have accountability. We need to have people that we can express to, and we need to have people that we can reach out to for help at any point, so that we can feel that we have the resources that we need and we can express what's really going on and be honest about it, and also have people that we know will show up for us in the moments that is the most important, where we really need it the most. So I think so many of us are accustomed to just closing ourselves off and being like, I got it. I got everything under control, and presenting a certain front. But allowing that vulnerability is so powerful as well, as far as knowing who you can reach out to and who you can really tell the truth to when there's moments that are just not, it's not going well. It's not happening the way I want it to. And I need to know that people are going to be able to show up for me and give me that support in those times. So now, before I move on from here, does anybody have any questions about energy or metabolism or any of the points that I covered here?
There is a comment in the chat that just says, "Too tired all day" by Sandra. I don't know if she wants to elaborate on that or not, but.
Okay. Yeah. If Sandra, if you want to share anything further about whether you're feeling more tired, you said all day, but is it something that is related to how you're eating, or just...
¿Me escucha?
Hello.
Hola, hola.
Hi. Yes.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Bueno,
Hola. Yo tengo 57 años y yo creo que estoy en el proceso de la menopausia. No. Y he tratado de hacer un poco de ejercicio, caminar. Bueno, más bien lo hago, no lo trato, lo hago. Ajá, estoy tomando muchos suplementos. Trato de no comer tanto azúcar, aunque los pasteles me encantan. Y aún así, pues sí, mi nivel de cansancio en el día es tanto que en la tarde ya sí muy, muy cansada.
okay. I think I got most of that. My Spanish is not great, but I think I got some of that you are dealing with menopause, and that you really love sugar. You really love sugar, and you're feeling very, very tired by the end of the day. Did I get that right?
Sí.
Great. Okay. Yes. Well, I think that one of the first things that I would definitely address around that is making sure you're getting a lot of fiber in your diet. So that can help you with the hormonal processing. Yes. So you would want to be looking at, a lot of whole grains like brown rice and millet and sorghum and squashes, lots of greens and salads, getting plenty of fiber, high fiber meals in your diet to help you with that hormonal processing that's going on. Because a lot of times in menopause, what we're facing is that we're dealing with a liver that's very overloaded, and we need to help to detox that liver and from the hormonal overload as well. So eating fiber is the best way that you can do that. So I would recommend lots of smoothies with plenty of greens and hemp seed and chia seed. Hemp seed and chia seed. And then doing a good amount of healthy fats. So one of my favorite smoothies is doing like almond milk with collagen protein and some hemp and chia, and doing like 2 cups of greens like kale or spinach, and then doing like a tablespoon of coconut oil. And the fats will help you. Yes, the fats will actually help you begin to feel more satisfied and help to start sort of counterbalance the sugar cravings. Because that's probably the result of the sugar cravings, is because you're feeling so tired. So we need to give your body plenty of nutrients in the morning, especially, so that you feel boosted up enough to make it through your day without letting those sugar cravings kick in. But then you need to also eat often enough. So I would say the fiber, getting good amount of protein, and eating healthy fats like coconut oil, olive oil, and avocado to help you
I'm allergic to avocado. I'm sorry. That's the only thing.
Are you? Okay.
Yes.
Well, there's plenty of other choices. No worries. There's plenty of other choices. Coconut oil or olive oil are both fine.
Okay.
But the fats will help you to not crave sugar so much by making you feel more full. So the protein and the fats will help you feel satisfied, so you're not craving as much sugar. And then the fiber and the greens will really help you to be able to go through this menopause process without feeling quite so exhausted.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else have any comments or any questions? And then we'll go through a little summary here. All right. Let's go ahead and jump forward then, and then I'll take any other questions at the end. So if you have anything else you'd like to cover. So putting it into practice. So the foundation we create for ourselves determines how resilient we are, how well we're able to bounce back when life comes at us, how well we're able to respond to the day-to-day life demands that are coming. And these are some of the things that I really recommend as far as just breaking it down into one simple step that you can come away with today. If you look through this list as we're going through it, picking one thing that you know would have an impact for you and committing to making that change. So choosing one practice to implement at a time. So sleep, I think that's very, very important. I think that most things can start to shift in a positive direction if we just get the quality of sleep that we need. And I know there can be a lot of challenges around that. So I'm not saying it's always easy, but I'm saying beginning to unravel what is getting in the way of getting quality sleep and address it. And then simplifying, making sure that, okay, if I cannot cook a whole week's worth of healthy meals because that's way too overwhelming, what can I do this week? Can I commit to making one meal at home? Can I commit to getting my husband on board with, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to cook together twice a week and make some healthy meals that we can then eat throughout the rest of the week. Can I commit to just going to the grocery store on a regular day every week and getting the fresh produce that I need to have in the fridge so I have healthy options available to me? These are all very simple but very powerful steps that have a direct impact on how you're experiencing this type of shift in your nutrition and your lifestyle habits. And giving respect and attention to messages from our body. So even if the one thing you began doing after today was you began jotting down, oh, this is what I feel like after I eat this food, or this is a symptom that keeps coming up, like I'm getting a headache every afternoon around 3 o'clock. Why is that? And actually begin to look at, okay, what's the cause here? And let's backtrack and let's see what I can begin to do to address this. And then begin to create space for new habits before you even begin. So if you are thinking about, okay, one of the things I think would really benefit me is if I got up and went for a walk every morning, then start scheduling that time and start making that a block of time that is going to be open for you to begin to do that, even before you get to the process of actually doing it. Because once the space is there, it will be much easier to say yes to it. So if that's getting up a little bit earlier to start, and even if you're just having a cup of tea and you're not going for a walk, but you're recognizing, like, I'm giving myself this extra 30 minutes, then I can begin to say yes to a walk in that time, or yes to doing a yoga practice in that time. And know that the quality of the food that we eat has the power to impact us on a cellular level. So everything about your experience changes from the ground up based on the foods that you're choosing to eat. So just that awareness can help you to feel more empowered around, like, I really want to start making this choice. Even if I'm eating out for a lot of meals, I want to start making a choice to choose just a little bit healthier option each time when I eat from the foods that are available at the restaurants that I go to. Or I want to start looking for what restaurants could provide a healthy meal that I can pick up. And I can want to start choosing those restaurants. So just looking for, where can I incrementally improve the quality of my food choices? And then asking for the resources and support that we need. So reaching out for help, talking to other friends who are also on a path to improving their health and what's working for them. Those can all be ways of starting to energize this motivation around making some significant shifts. And then look at what's working versus I can't do all of this. So what's working right now is one of the reasons why I like to start off with that when we're having this conversation, because I want to hear what's actually working for you right now that you could build on from there. And how can we just improve that and continue to expand on that versus being like, well, let's do an entire lifestyle makeover here and implement all of these things at once. I think that's one of the things that is most powerful about the health coaching world is we really start with like just 3 things at a time, 3 small steps. And let's keep building these 3 small steps, one after another, until we get to the point where we're really experiencing the results and success that we want to be experiencing. All right. So now I will just open up. If anybody has any other questions or any concerns that I can assist or address, please feel free to jump in and let me know.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I learned so much about my nutrition and what I can improve to make me feel better, and I hope y'all did too. I will be putting an evaluation link in the chat. Please fill that out and let us know what we can improve on, what you like. And once again, thank you so much, Rachel. I'll be hanging around until a little after 2:30 if anybody wants to ask any more questions or have Rachel go into any further details. Thank y'all so much for joining us today.